So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. This is my second time through this little piece of the Sifra D tzniuta with the Pirush according to the Gaon of Vilna. It was extremely deep for me with all kinds of new places. And when we got to the end, somehow I erased it. And it was a little meat here. So I'm going to do it again, because what it contains are things that are for posterity, I think, for me. The Zohar says, Galufe de Galifin. Bigugolos Eric Anpin, looking at the skull of Eric Anpin, Chakuk Shlosha Asur Orchim Chakukim de Hibarto. On that skull are carved, Chakukim, 13 different paths of whiteness. Shehem HaShorsh the Orchim Chakukim, which is the root of the carved path de Hibarta of whiteness, shall call HaTachtonim, of everything that comes downwards. Now he said, V'inyan hu, so exactly what are we talking about? Ki lamala ba'or hagugolas, so look at the top of the head, and just look at the skin on it. Chakukim, in that skull, are carved Shlosha Asar Orchim, 13 different paths. So another word for that could be drachim, or highways, or whatever. Hanaasim ayedehis chalkus hanimim, which are made as a result of the divisions that take place in bundles of hairs, sa'aros, lo shlosha aser cholokim, and so that the skin here is divided into 13 different portions according to the way that the bundles of hairs work that are on top of the head. V'osam orcham, and in these paths, meirim oros hachibarta. Here's where you see the glow that is coming, the lights that are coming from this whiteness. V'heim arba orchim, and they are actually 4 paths de hibarta. L'tzad achrei hagulgolis. There are 4 of them on the back side of the skull. V'arba orchim de hibarta l'tzad yamin the gugolis, and then on the right side, there are another 4. V'arba orchim de hibarta l'tzad small hagugolis, and there's another 4 paths of whiteness on the left side of the skull. Hare kan shneim aser orchim, so now here you have 12 different paths. Va'od orech hashlosha, and then there's a 13th one. It's what is this? With hashlosha also, the 13th one, right? I'm sorry. Shenechlalu bo kol ha'orchim, which all of the other ones, that is the other 12 from the back side, the right and the left, they all are incorporated in this 13th one, besod hanachash daholon, and this is actually the secret, which is mentioned in the deepest places in Kabbalah of the Nachash, this serpent. So it's harekan shlosha asa orchim. So now, if you take the kolel, now you have 13 of them. Veda shlosha asa orchim chakukim heim. So these 13 paths are carved. Heim hashorish, and they become the upper root. Asher mehem mispashet oros achivarti, from which pass down lights of this whiteness. The orchim shall call the tachtonim, to the paths, in other words, the channels that bring this whiteness down to the lower worlds. And Mavara say the hispashtos ashlosha asa orchim. So now I want to explain how it is that these shlosha asa orchim shine. They're chakukim, they're carved, bilgugolos of Eric Anpin, in the skull of Eric Anpin, and he says va'amar, and it says like this. He says ki tehila mispashtim ha'arba orchim de hivarta. First, you see the spread of the 4 orchim de hivarta b'sheba'achre rosh, around the back of the head. B'cheza de hivyarich, and it has the opinion of the appearance of a long serpent. Mina orav sheba'achre harosh. So from the neck, or from the back of the neck, behind the head, at the nape of the neck, orech hashlosha also, that's where the 13th path the chivarte, that's where you find it. The hispashet orach kol harosh, and it spreads there for the leg from the back of the head, I guess at the nape of the neck, where it connects to the head. I think that's the nape of the neck. The orach kol harosh, and then it goes in a straight line to the length of the head. Gembus nachash arach, like a long snake. Besod tanim ha'elyon, which is the secret of the upper snake. Hanikra LEVYATAN, which is called by this name, LEVYATAN. Nachash Bariach, also known as the spanning snake. Sheshochev LaOrach HaKol Hayam, and the rest of the sentence is that this spanning snake, it dwells in length by the sea. Excuse me, for the length of the whole sea. In other words, it spans the sea. Which is in fact the 13th path that is incorporated. All the other 12 are incorporated into this path. Kol ha'orchim kanal, all of those other paths. V'holech la'orech kol ha'gogolos, and it goes to the length of the entire skull. Asher bo mislavish bina shel resha delo isyada. Now let's get back to this again. It goes to the length of the entire skull. So from the nape of the neck all the way up on top of the skull, it goes through the whole length. Asher bo mislavish the bina, because in the skull itself, panimi to the skull, is the bina of the resha lo isyada, hanikras yam, which is called by the name yam. So this bina, or I'm not sure who the yam is yet, but at any rate, this bina of the resha lo isyada, also known as atik yamim, is inside of the skull. Mispashet lakan, then it spreads. So as this 13th path of whiteness, cholech bo oref laorech harosh, as it goes and it continues down from the nape of the neck to the length of the skull. Harehu mispashet lakan, it starts spreading the l'shnei tzadi upon him to the two different sides of the head, of the face. The hainu, that is to say, shemispashet mimenu arba orchim dechivarti l'tzad yamim. So he says, as is this number 13 spreads across the head, it spreads out. He says arba orchim, 4 paths, dechivarti l'tzad yamim, for the right side. Va'arba orchim dechivarti l'tzad small. So those are the ones that go down the sides of the face. Ha'oros shel shmona orchim dekivarti elu. So now you have these 8 paths of whiteness. Mispashtim, they spread al apanim besod shin ayin nahorim. So they spread onto the face in the secret of the name Kale, which in a milui makes 185, and the 2 sides of the face, 2 times 185 makes 370, which is the Shin Ayin Nahorim, lights. V'husod arichas apayim. It's also the concept of spreading and making the face long. Shel Eric Anpin. Now that is a thought that could be developed, but it's not the point here. So v'omer Odin, he says furthermore, Zanva Beresha. What happens is the tail meets the head. Kikasha orech hashlosha aser, as this 13th path, maskil hispashet min rosha ba'oref laorech agogolos adaponim. Let me read this again. He says, as this path, this 13th path begins to spread from the beginning place, which is at the nape of the neck, laorech agogolos, and goes all the way down, it seems to me down the center, the length of the face. Azai choizer misagel, it stops when it gets to the end there and goes backwards and starts to make a circle, to circle. Lakan on all sides. Sevivos kol harosh be'igel. Now it makes this 13th tikkun, that's not tikkun, this 13th path, it turns into a circle. Ad shechazu la'achrab, until it finally comes back around and meets up the makom haschalasa ba'oref, in the place where it began at the nape of the neck. V'nimsa shasiyah ma'orech, so it comes like this, that the end of this path, the hivarte hashlosha aser, of the 13th, that is the 13th path, shuhu hazanav shalo, which was considered to be its tail. So he means like to say, it starts off and it goes straight over the top of the head. Imagine your head, and it goes up and it comes to the tip of where the top of the head stops, and starts circling, and it circles around, and this second part is called the tail. So he says, Shuhu hazanav shalo hu b'makom rosha sheba'oref, so it comes back to the place where it began at the beginning of the head. So tanim hanekeva. So this circular force of this number 13 is the secret of the female serpent. Hanikra nachash akalachso, and it's called the twist. I guess it's the bending serpent. Shemisagul makiv is called hayam, which circles around and surrounds the entire yam. So now we know the yam really refers to the Gilgolas, the top of the head, which has this bina of Atik Yamim inside of it. And what happens is that the tail then grabs a hold of the head. Which is what? He says it's the meeting of the original line that started going in a straight line. He says, so it meets up with the origin of the 13th path. Hamakif is called Hagogolas, and now it goes around the entire Gogolas, Shehu Besod Hayam Canal, which is the Gogolas is now the top of the head, at least, is considered to be the sea. So this a lot of different words for different kinds of descriptions. So he said Va'inyan is like this. There are two different snakes, Zachar and Nekeva. He says Shehem Tanim Zachar Hanikra LEVYATAN. So there is a male snake, which is called the Levyatan. That is the Nacha, and also another name, it's called the Nachash Bariach. I think the word Bariach means spanning, like bridging. Shecholek La'orech, which continues along the length. But Tanin Nekeva, then there's another Tanin. It's female, Hanikra Levyatan, which is called the Levyatan. Nachash Akalachson, also known, it's a Levyatan too, but it's also called the Nachash Akalachson, the turning or the twisting snake. Shemis Agel Umaki Fakol, that this snake, which is not a snake in the sense that nobody should get confused, that we're talking about the snake in the Garden of Eden. That's not the snake we're talking about. We're talking about a path of whiteness, actually. It's interesting that they use those words. That will say, I don't know why, but they're talking about a path of whiteness that goes from the nape of the neck to the front of the head, and then starts turning around and meets itself in a circular fashion from where it started. So he said, "Maki fakol," and it surrounds everything. For who sod orach dehivarte hashlosha aser. So this is the secret now. You understand of this 13th path of whiteness. Shekolu gam came elu base bechina zachav nekeva, that it has actually a male and female aspects to it. Ki dechidas is pashtusa leorach kol harosh, because at the beginning, when it starts to spread, and the length of the whole head. Huba b'china zachar, so that's what we call the zachar. The hemshek is pashtusa savis, of when it starts going around, that we see in other places, that we see many places. From the very beginning of the Eitz Chaim, he starts talking about how it is that the line comes into the circle, exactly how this is male and female way back when. And here it comes here. V'hemshech is pashtusa. Savid kala rosh hu b'bechinas nekeva, so that place that goes around is the female aspect. Besod hadavar hu, so the secret of this is what? Kigor kashlosha aser dehivarti, so that is the 13th path of whiteness. Behiyosu kolo kala yud gimel orchem, since it itself has within it all of the other 13 paths. Hu besod hamazel the dikna de erik anpin shekolu kol yud gimel tikuni dikna. See, it's the same concept that ultimately winds up in the beard of Eric Anpin, which is a channel of bringing this whiteness down into the lower worlds by making it small enough to be digestible. He says this is the same concept as the 13th mazel of the beard that we see over in the Idris, where it's talked about that, which it contains within it all of the rest of the other 12, plus itself, its own essence, isn't there. V'yesh bo gam came shnei mazlos elyon v'tachton. Because in the beard of Eric Anpin, there are also two mazlos. Shehem bebeis bechinos, that the number 8 mazel is Zachor, and the number 13 mazel is Nekeva. V'chein gam orach hashlosha asa dehivarti kol yud gimel orchim. So that same way that you understand that, you understand from this that this 13th path of whiteness has all the other paths within it. V'yesh bo beis bechinas Zachor and Nekeva, call more, and it has these two aspects, one male, one female, as we have said. So v'ama'od, and he says further, Reisha achzach l'skapit, ki harosh orech dechivarti. So this hair, this path of whiteness, which is number 13, Shuhu b'makom ha'oref de Eric Anpin, which begins at the place of the nape of the neck of Eric Anpin, chozer lehispashet lamata. Then it starts going downwards. Ba'oref ba'achre Eric Anpin, along with it going, let me start again. As its regular path at 13 goes up and then goes around and meets itself back at the neck, from that position, it starts going downwards. So he said the hispashet, the mata, is spread downwards, ba'oref ba'achre Eric Anpin, in the back of the neck of Eric Anpin. V'husod lavninus de hakivarto hamispashet ad roshe kasvim de Eric Anpin. And this is the secret of the whiteness of the whitening power of whiteness, which spreads unto the heads of the shoulders, in other words, the beginnings of the shoulders, the Eric Anpin. So he says, A'abar. So Abar means a bridge. And now the chivarti, this whiteness, is spread down onto the shoulders of Eric Anpin. Azai over hachivarti derek ma'aver. Then what happens is, in that position, there is another parts of which is built on the outside of that. And this is the parts of Abba Ve'ima. We're going to see that in a minute. He says, over hachivarti derek ma'aver, there is a bridge, Besoch partzufi Abba Ve'ima, that comes out from the middle of the partzufim of Abba Ve'ima, malvishim as zroas Eric Anpin, and covers over the throat, the shoulders of Eric Anpin. Miyamin is small. In other words, it surrounds the shoulders of Eric Anpin, this partzufim of Abba Ve'ima. V'chivarti mispashet lamata, and then the chivarti starts moving downwards, kedei l'hagil the rosh zer anpin, because ultimately what we want is that this should reach the head of zer anpin. V'zer, that is there, k'shemagia chivarti the rosh zer anpin, and when the chivarti reaches the head of zer anpin, azai miskaten seir sheer, or let me say it again, azai miskaten sheer oras achivarti, because as it's reproaching Zera Anpin, the amount of whiteness starts to lessen. Ki lamala be'Eric Anpin, and he said, because up above in Eric Anpin, hayachivarti bebechinas oros shel shin ayin riboy alman, there was the concept of 10,000 worlds. It was the light that was coming from all of those different places. Now, the nature of the night light, we're not talking about it. This is a very powerful light of nothingness. V'ata be ridas, but now that it becomes going downwards, it becomes more physical. V'ata be ridas the rosh zer anpin, who rak bebechinas orishel kuf nun, that's 150 ribo 10,000 almim. In other words, the number of lights. It's not that the light changed. It's just the number of the bulbs changed. So that means that the intensity of the light is less. Nautil. V'acher kach yotzach chavarti min rosh zer anpin, and then after that, the chavarti leaves the head of zer anpin, and mispashet, and it spreads. V'nesoa b'kol hachamesh seviros shel zer anpin, it spreads and it travels into all of the 5 spheros of zer anpin, shehem chesed gevura teferetz netzach and hod. So he says, Ki hachivarto hu besod lavninus shel chesed elyon, because what is the chavarti, which is whiteness? It's the secret of the lavninus, which I said is the whitening power of the chesed elyon, upper chesed. V'derek hachesed lehiyos noseya. So let's understand who's the chesed elyon. Chesed elyon is the chesed of Atik Yamim, which is meluvish in the Gugolas. And then he also said, but the inside of that chesed is the bina of Atik Yamim. So, I mean, you can say heavy stuff up there. But Derek HaChesed Lehiyos Noseya, so the way that it works with chesed is that it travels mispashet b'chamei sephiros in the five spheros, like we said. Shehem sod halicha v'nesira shel chamei shmeus parsa. So this is the secret of another concept which can be developed elsewhere, and I don't really know, and I know it is in the Zohar. The secret of the traveling of the trip of 500 parsa. So exactly what that means, I don't know. But at any rate, that's what it is. So this is talking about the trip of the light of Chesed coming into the five spheros of Zeranpin. V'gon is v'achar is pashas da Chesed dehibarte ad spheros ahod. So now that ultimately these five spreads into 5 places, and it reaches the sphere of Hod. Oz nigna the Chesed. What happens there is now the Chesed becomes hidden. V'nechlal b'spheros hayisod Zeranpin, it becomes a part of Yisod. It becomes hidden inside of the Yisod of Zeranpin. So or haganas the tzaddikim. This is the tzaddik of this is that concept of that the light that is hidden away for tzaddikim l'asi devo ve'enim izgala rak b'yamos Mashiach, and is only revealed during the days of Mashiach u'kamoshi yizboyer. And we're going to get into that, he says. So let's go over here. Let me take a break and just clear my head a little bit. Be right back. Okay, so this is Baruch, and I'm back for a second shot. We didn't really finish from one space to the next, really one sentence to the next, but we started right over here. Let's look at it now. He said, Chad lo alef yomim zeirim. B'shnas achas min elef shanim shel elef hashishi. He says, B'shana achas, in 1 year, of the elef shanim shel elef hashishi, of the 1,000 years of the 6th millennium, hanikra elef yomim ketanim. So it's called 1,000 small years, small days. V'hu shnas motzoi shvius. It also corresponds to the year after the Shavuos. Shehu shnas ha'geula, which is the year of the redemption, ubias haMashiach, and the coming of the Mashiach. So one of those years. Now I'd like to read this again because I really had a lot of trouble with this, understanding it the first time. It said, B'shana achas min elef shanim shal elef hashishi. In one of the years, from one of the 6 millennia, those are called, which are, the 6 millennia is called elef yomim ketanim. All of these things are ideas that I'm not really familiar with. V'hu shnatz motzoi shavias, and at the same time, it's the concept of the year after the sabbatical year. Shuhu shnas ha'geula, which also is a metaphor for the year of the redemption, ubias Mashiach. Now, all of that is an introduction, which was not easy for me to follow because these are ideas I don't know. Simple as that. So it says, Izgalia. At this point, Oz Yizgala ba'olam or ha'chesed dehibarta. So this is after the Shemitah. After this time, there's going to be a revelation of this white light, Nignaz, that it was hidden away by Yisod the Zer Anpin, in the Yisod of Zer Anpin, that we mentioned that before. Vuhu or Hagonos, this is the hidden light, Misheshes Yemei Bereshish, that from the very beginning of creation, is Yemei Bereshish Adam Roa Bo Mesofa Olam Ad Sofa, the man can see in it from the beginning to the end. Let me just turn this off for a second, and I'll wait till this noise stops. What I'm saying is that this light, which is the original Hivarta that has made its way down into the Yisod of Zer Anpin, This is the original light that was hidden away at the beginning of Seder Bereshis. Now let me see where I was. Hu or Haganos Mishesha Shemei Bereshis. Sha'adim roa bo mesofa olam, that this light is possible to be able to see it from one end of the universe, ad sofa to the other end. Now obviously those phrases mean something deeper, but we're not going there right now. So he said, when we say the days of the Mashiach, he besod Melech Hadar. This is the secret of the eighth king, Shuhu Ataras Yesod, which is the concept of the extension of the Yesod, commotion is Boyer La'el. Now we've gone over this before. And the idea is to bring this light of this chesed, this whiteness, into the tip of the Yesod. In other words, the most end point of the process of refinement of the light. Of Omnam, and we say lo yisgala oz. Okay, so let me go back. V'lechein yisgala oz or hachesed dekivarte be'itra the Yesod b'taras Yesod. So this is the whole process of bringing this tremendous. He says yisgala oz or hachesed, this light of chesed. It's the chesed of this kivarta, which we're now tracing back to the origins of the whole concept of whiteness, to the bina of the race of the low yisida, and all of the flow that comes along with it, ultimately into the yesod of Zer Anpin, and now into the ataras yesod of Zer Anpin. Va'amnam, so we see like this, lo yizgala oz etzem achesed hivarti, but even though they didn't reach that place, the actual essence of the light of whiteness is still, in other words, the light itself is closed up. Shehu sod LEVYATAN b'tanim shal orach yud gimel. So he says this light, the light of chesed that we're talking about, is the secret of this LEVYATAN, which is the concept of this snake. The snake shall orach yud gimel of the 13th path to hivarti, the Rosh Erikanpin. Now, in other words, it's a direct connection to the source of all this unbelievable rahmanis and kindness, and just blessing and blessing and blessing is hidden inside of the Yesod. Ki hachavarti the gogolas Erikanpin, because the whiteness that's on the skull of Erikanpin, who besod chesed shall bina the reish lo isya, it's the secret, because within it and hidden within it is the chesed of the bina, is the chesed of the bina of a reish lo isyada. Now, that's a complicated statement, and let me see what I can break it down even more. He said the Gogolta Erikanpin, the skull of Erikanpin, is the secret of the chesed. Now, bina, so the bina of the reish lo isyada would have 10 spheros. And the bina of the chesed of that, which is the 6th one, is the one that is able to make itself be manifest in the gugolas of Erikanpin. Yeah, the reish of the lo isyada, it's that chesed of the bina. Wow. It's not just the bina, he says, it's the chesed within the bina that gets involved with the chesed in the gugolas of Erikanpin. But only after the 6,000 years are over would this whiteness be revealed, Shuhu besod bina, which is the sod really of bina. But during the time of the Mashiach, Shuhu be'elef hashishi, which is not then, it's really now. Now we're in the time of the elef hashishi. Einam izgala rak b'derech hislavshus dahainu, that it can't be revealed, it can only be revealed by being clothed in these ataras yesod, dahainu kultra digbekitrui. So this is a word that we saw previously not translated well. Not translated, period. He says, kultra bikitrui, shachevarti the klalas al-gogola, so this whiteness, which we've traced it now back to the chesed, the bina, of Atek Yamim. He said the klalas al-gogoltas nikra kultra. He says that the whole concept of the skull is the kultra nichlal besos of the chavira, and that whiteness really is a part of the avira that's inside of the skull of Erikanpin, and nikra kutra, which is called kutra. So now you have the kultra, a big kitroi, which has this whiteness inside of it. So he says, so how's it go? He says, umavara inin his lavshus va'amar. So now he wants to explain, how is it that we in fact see how this whiteness is enclosed in this avira? So it brings this word sanpira. He says, Ki orach yud gimel dechivarte. So this path, this 13th path of whiteness, hacholek leorach harosh, that goes upon the whole, or along the whole length of the roth of the head, shehu tanin hazachor, which that long one is called the male serpent, hanikra levyatan nachash bariach, which is called levyatan, the spanning nachash. Yesh lo bechinas yisod hanikra sanpir. So he says, wait a minute. He says this spanning serpent, it has a yisod, that's its bottom end, which is actually like the nozzle of a hose. He says sod hanikra sanpir, so that yisod is called the sanpir. Shal yado nimshach or hachivarta lamata, because it's that place, and this place called sanpir, which apparently is inside in some way of the avira of Eric Anpin, of the skull of Eric Anpin. He said, Ba'advoy, so it is its portion. Va'yisoda zecha yored, it goes down, lehislavesh bechelko. He said, this is the understanding, is that it has, in other words, Rabbi Memran used to say a lot that the directions have to match. So here he's saying is that the midos have to match. He says the yazod, this sod, it goes down and it becomes clothed in its own portion. Where is its own portion? It goes down, it's a little bit difficult to translation, but here it goes. The Haina B'Chavira Chagana B'Kruma Mitachas Gogola. So let's say inside of the skull, there's a crust. The inside of the crust is some kind of vapor or air. It's hard to define what it could be. Shu Makomo. This is actually Makoma. It's its pace for Chelko. It's really the place shall Yisod the Chivarta, where the Yisod of the Chivarta starts. Now, this is a really different idea. So he says, so he moved from the Yisod, the basis of where the Yisod, he described it, that the Yisod here are, I don't know, let's keep going on. So Yisod the Chivarta Va'inyadu, the Inya is like this. Ki noda she Yisod the Bina. So we're talking about the Yisod of Bina, is the das, and that ubo das mislavish betachton l'seis bo chius v'kiyum. Let's talk about just Bina, not the Bina of Atik Yamin, but just the concept of the Bina as the Rab describes, that Bina enters into the Rosh of Zeranpin. So let's just take that. So he says, as this Bina enters in betachton l'bos b'chius, and he brings life force and life into Zeranpin, but the chilas machum is pashtus achesed the das, and so the first. So now you understand. Let's understand. The nai of Ima comes into Zeranpin, and the particular yisod of Ima has within it the das that is going to build Zeranpin. It's the das of Zeranpin. She's holding that. She brings that into Zeranpin. So he says, his pashtus achesed the das who b'sfiris achesed. But the first place that the das goes to, that it wants to spread the chesed to, is chesed, because they go together. So therefore you're trying to build chesed, and the first place you go is the chesed. It's the concept of something we see in other places. It's called the chesed de kulo. That chesed has within it everything that comes after it. So we see this also the same idea. Hachivorta, just like we saw that over there with the chesed is the first place that it spreads in Zeranpin, because it's chesed that's spreading. So he says, so therefore it goes to the sphere of chesed. But they said the same thing over by the Chivarta. But Wilgolas kuba bechinas bina the reish lo isyada. Now he says again, he says the skull is the concept, is the place of the bina, the manifestation of the bina of the reish lo isyada. The yisod hachivarta, and the yisod of the Chavarta, which is the end of this Chavarta, who Yisod the Bina is actually the Yisod of Bina, sheyored lehislavish lamata, that has come down and being also clothed inside of that too. But the Chilas is pashta chasad and the Chivarta, so the beginning of the spread of the chasadim of this whiteness, who b'ravira is in the avira. Why? Shu bechinas chesed atachton, because this is where the chesed, the lower chesed, comes from. This is the lower chesed. Ki chesed the reish the lo isya. So let's go back over here. He says, what is he meant by the lower chesed? He said the chesed the reish the lo isya mislabish b'chavira. It winds up being clothed inside of the vira, inside of the skull of Eric Anpen. He's saying that the skull of Eric Anpen is really where the bina of Atik Yomim is located. The chesed is located in the avira. V'nimseki makom v'chelko shall soda hivarta. So there it comes out like this, that the place, the portion of the yesod of the varta who b'avira is going to be in avira. So he said, so this wider shuhu chesed the bina, which is really the chesed the bina, that is the bina of Atek Yomim, gonos or moluvish avira is hidden inside of that avira, which is chesed the tachton, which is considered the lower chesed. The upper chesed is the chesed of bina of Resha the Lo Isyada. V'kachu yored mispashet the malo. So this is the way that it goes down. It spreads downward, and Mizgala b'mos of Mashiach, and will be revealed in the time of the Mashiach be'elef hashishi, in the 6th millennium, in the 6,000th years, which is where we're at right now. He said, be'elef hashvi yizgala chivarti the chesed the bina batzmusa, but that's only the chesed of bina, of this ultimate bina as it's clothed. That it will be in our time. That's what he's saying. He said the bina batzmusa, but the real bina will not come out until the 7th millennium, below his lavshas v'ganiz, and it won't be clothed in anything. No hidden away, but chesed etachton, the chavira canal, will not be in that concept that it be hidden inside of the vira. V'amba b'za'od, and he says further on this. He says, ki b'yimosa Mashiach, in the time of the Mashiach, be'elef hashishi, and he repeats it again. It's going to be during the period of the 6,000 years, of the 6th millennia. You will not see a revelation of the chesed, of the light of the skull, that is the pure revelation. But rather, it will break the head. Now, let me see, did I get to this? I did. But rather, the head is broken. Now, this is a place where probably we'll begin tomorrow. Nishbar rosh achivarte shuhu sod rosh atanim. So the head of the serpent breaks. B'mayim the yamaraba, and it breaks into the water that it surrounds of the Great Sea. Ayidech hamamayim shel yamagodol. It says it really breaks through that. Shuhu sod shefa ha'oros hanikrayim mayim, and it's because of the tremendous shefa of light that is called water. Sheyotzim derakas aros, that come out through the hairs of memuchas dimah hanikra yamagodo, which is called the Great Sea. Now we have all different kinds of things here, metaphors for this word sea. I see that it has all this thing, and I'm getting a little mixed up in it, but I'm doing the best I can. So he says, is bareshe, so the head breaks, but mayim the yamarabba, because of water. In this case, that's not, he doesn't say that it's coming from the skull, like we had been saying before, that was a yam. He says instead, this is the yam rabba, which is the mochstimo al yedecha b'mayim shel yam agadol, shehu sod shefa ha'oros anikrayim mayim sheyotzim derek hasaros mimochstimo, from the mochstimo inside of the rosh of Eric Anpen, which is going upward, nikra yam agadol, which is called the Great Sea. And we have a pasuk on that. Shabarte rosha teninim alamayim. So this is a tillim, and there's a hidden. This is a psalm, and there's a hidden idea in here. Kolomar, he said, Shabarta roshe hachabarta hanikram rosh teninim. So you broke the head of this whiteness, which is called by the name of the red of the serpent, the head of the serpent. Hamayim shal mochas dimah, because of the flow that's coming out of the mochas dimah. What is that? The Inyan is like this. Kinis boyer la'el, because it's been explained previously. The orach yud gimel dechivarta, that this 13th path we said, Hakol will call yud gimel orach dechivarta, which has all the other 13 within it. Who sod hatanim shal yam ha'elyon debina. This is the concept, another phrase that's of the upper river, or upper sea, which is in Bina. So he's been talking about the Bina of Atak Yomim, so exactly what Bina we talking about. V'nimsiki klalas akibartish al rosh Eric Anpen, and it comes like this, that if you want to talk about the whiteness, period, on the head of Eric Anpen, that we said before, there were these channels that are carved into it, of Eric Anpen, who sod tanin, this is the secret of serpent, v'hine berosh hatanim, at the head of the serpent, hazeh, nishbar, it breaks, ayidei sa'aros hayotzim mimochastimo. Why? Because there are hairs, in other words, I'll say it out, because of the hairs that are pushed up through the light, breaking out from the mochastimo, going upwards, which is like a light of a gevura. So here's where I understand this, is that originally the head of Eric Anpen was completely white. There was nothing to show you that there were grooves in it or anything like that for paths. Maybe that's what it means. But it was just pure white, shining kindness. Then comes out the hairs from the mochastimo. So he says, and as a result of that, where they come out on top of the head and hairs start growing, they start dividing up these paths of nokvim, and they make holes alachivarti onto the whiteness. Ayidech hanekavim v'hagumos shal makom yetzias sa'aros, through the fact that there's going to be a lot of pores, a lot of hair follicles there, and there's going to be ditches there where everything will fall into. Vayidei kach, and what happens as a result of that, mismayet or hachivarte. So this causes less light to be on the skull itself, because there's hairs in the way, and also these gumos. Amnam be'elav shvi. So we see like this, in the 7,000 year, which previously it said is going to be a time where the anhaga, the world that as we understand, is going to stop. So he said that 7,000 years. 7,000 years, Gala HaChivarte V'Chatzmusa, that's when the Chivarte reveals itself in its utter essence below Shvira, without having to break anything, V'Nikov, or having holes in the skull, because of the auras that come out from the Mochastimo. Then he says on this, furthermore, Shnei Teninim, wait a minute, there's two snakes. Choya b'rosh Eric Anpen, on the rosh of Eric Anpen, b'zachar v'nekeva, which is the secret of male and female, which we said that there was the zachar one, anikra LEVYATAN nachash b'riach. It's a LEVYATAN, which is like a big fish of some sort or something like that, which is called a spanning snake. Which is the whiteness that goes over the whole skull. Vatana, that's the lengthwise. Vatanim and Nekeb, and then there's another one which is female, on Nikra LEVYATAN Nachash al Kalason, which is called the curving one. So this is one that curves or makes circles. Umakiv called Rosh Kamoshi is boil as we see up above. So therefore, Ama Roshi Tanine Beloshan Rabbi. So therefore we have a plural idea here. Roshi Taninim is Loshan Rabbi. Means there's more than one. Chad is Chazro. Amnam Ada Chazro Liyos Rak Tanim Echad. But then it comes back into oneness again. Vukamo Shamarno Bezoar, like we said in the Zohar. Shakodesh Baruch Hu Machez V'Shava as Rosh Taninim Zachar. So he says plural. He said, well, let's go back and in Tanin. No, it's plural. He says that Kodesh Baruch Hu Machez V'Shavar. He says it's going to break and crush and break as Rosh Hatanim, the head of the snake. He says Zachar v'hareg as Hatanim nekeva. So he's going to crush the head of the male and kill the female. V'keven shahareg as a nekeva harecha v'yesh rak tanim echad. So then there would only be one. V'inyan acharigohu, the idea, what are we talking about when you say you're killing it? Shahor shal chivarte the tanim nekeva, because the surrounding light of the tanim nekeva, Elyon Einem is Pashet Lamata Klal, it doesn't go downwards at all. In other words, it doesn't function in relationship to where the incident Kodesh Baruch Hu wants it to go. It doesn't move. But that part of the light will be put away in such a way that it will be not functioning anymore. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. It just will be out of the picture of what's going to affect Mashiach and the time of the change. Ella be'elef hashvihi, only in the 7,000. V'nimseki inyan shavir satanim shamarno who rock batanim azacha. So the kinds of the breaking or killing the snake is only the male part. Shalom nehereg, the male part which is not killed. V'zechu shamarno. This is what we're saying later in the Mala is bareshe, that its head is broken. Rosh hatanim nishbar b'loshen yochid. And that's where we stopped, and I think that we're going to go over to page Resh Sadi Vav to start again next time. This is Bar.